I always say with parents, think about it this way. Teaching your kids about money, think that there's always an opportunity to teach your kids about money.
100%.
Right? That's how I think about it. I have a 10-year-old boy and a 4-year-old. And I'm always saying there's an opportunity to teach them about money everywhere. The opportunities are everywhere. Right?
Yeah.
So for example, pocket money. Or, if you're going to send them with something at school, maybe on Friday they have TAC. I know most schools now do like what you call TAC.
Yes.
Don't do that. Give them real cash, something that is tactile.
Okay.
Right? Because now you're introducing that money is something that it's a finite thing, right?
Yes.
At some point it's going to finish.
Hello and a warm welcome to yet another fantastic episode of the JSE Investor Avenue podcast series. I'm Gugulethu Mfuphi, your host for this particular conversation. And as you would know by now, there's been a build-up to the phenomenal insights that we've been able to share with various industry leaders to really help us in terms of just getting better financial knowledge and understanding. Everything from understanding the world of investments, exchange-traded funds, how group savings can also manage to access their retail investments into the stock exchange, and even a better understanding of how the JSE itself as an institution is helping small and medium-sized entities to actually build and raise capital. But have you ever noticed that whenever it comes to conversations around money, before we talk about entrepreneurs, investment clubs, groups, and even the personal successes you desire and create for yourself in your career, you fundamentally need to go back to the basics, talking about money with your loved ones. And today's conversation is definitely centered around this theme, how best it is that we build not only safe, sustainable, and start to be proactive in how we manage conversations around finances, money, and investing with our families and loved ones. Today, we have someone who is an absolute expert in this regard. I've been able to follow her journey, converse with her, and even actively participate in many of the solutions that she brings forward to her tribe members. Today, we're joined by someone who's a renowned entrepreneur, an author of the book, You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich. But most importantly, she also works as a financial coach. Mapalo Makhu joins us to give us some insight as to how best you and I can sit down around the braai with our families and be frank in terms of our discussions about finances. Mapalo, such a pleasure to have you and such a delight to deep dive into the conversations we're going to have today.
Thank you so much, Gugu. It is absolutely an honor to be here and always talking to you. It's just the cherry on top.
I love it. Mapalo, this is not a conversation that you're a stranger to, right? You've actually been an advocate for allowing and encouraging many South Africans to be robust in the conversations they have around money, finances, and investments. And perhaps we'll, deep dive into some of the aspects that have encouraged that for you. But let's go back to the why it actually matters. And what are some of the themes that we need to be cognizant of when it comes to discussing finances with family?
I think, Gugu, coming here, it cost us money, right? To get into your car, to look this beautiful, everything costs money. And if you are someone with children, it depends, okay, what school are they going to go to? Where do you live? All of these things, you have to consider money. Mm-hmm. And this is a conversation that a lot of people are not comfortable with, and yet it impacts every single decision in your life. So for me, I have been an advocate of not just teaching women about money, but advocating to say, let's talk about money. Let's make the conversation not taboo.
Yes.
The why, it controls everything.
Exactly.
Right? It controls absolutely everything. And so if you can get comfortable talking about money, it unlocks so much. And I think, if you look at social media, for example, you find people talking about generational wealth. That's loaded. But at the core of it is, are we having real conversations about money? Yeah.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because it really does play a consequence into everything, right? From the loaf of bread and liter of milk you buy to the car that you drive as a family, the home you actually live in, and the experiences that you can actually expose yourself to, whether in terms of education or just lifestyle that you'd like to have. And maybe this also goes to underscore the far-reaching consequences because money influences a lot in terms of the quality of life you have, but even the quality of experience that your loved ones have when your life comes to an end. So it's really far-reaching in terms of, from the cradle to the grave.
100%. And I think if you're not comfortable talking about money about day-to-day stuff, the lifestyle. Are we going on holiday? Are we not going on holiday this year? Are we moving you to this school? Are we moving to upgrading the house? And even your own retirement, right? It impacts that. It impacts estate planning. If you cannot talk about the price of bread, if you cannot talk about, okay, how do we plan for this holiday? You most certainly will not be able to talk about, do you have a will? Yeah. Do you have an estate plan in place? Are you making sure that there's enough liquidity in your estate? You can't possibly have those conversations at all if you cannot have the small conversations about, okay, are we foregoing this so that, we put some money into your tax-free savings account as a child?
Yeah.
Are we foregoing the labels for now so that, we can buy a generic brand, but making sure that we are funding your university?
Yeah, exactly. This is something that you actually are very passionate about and you advocately do in your day-to-day job as a speaker, as an author, as a personal finance coach, is I guess enabling and equipping families with the tools to actually talk about money. Because maybe the bread and milk stuff might be easier than actually saying, well, this is what my estate looks like. So where do we start? And typically we're well aware, you need to start with a financial advisor, perhaps speak to a wealth manager.
Yes.
But with such an intricate journey to wealth planning, where should a family actually start in terms of taking the lead and encouraging those conversations around finances?
I think, Gugu, you cannot talk about something that you yourself are not comfortable with, right? So if you are a parent or you have a family, the one thing you should do is get comfortable with talking about money first. Get comfortable and honest with yourself about your own finances.
That also means you need to be comfortable and honest about where your financial standing is, right? However great or uncomfortable it might be.
100%. So it starts with you, right? You cannot expect your kids or your family and loved ones to start automatically talking about money if you yourself are ashamed of your own situation. So you really have to take a step back and say, how do I get comfortable with money? And one of the things I absolutely love, and we do this together with Maya Fisher-French on our money bootcamp.
Yes.
We always ask people to do a money questionnaire, right? To get a sense of, why do I believe this about money? Why do I use money the way I do, right? What has informed these decisions surrounding money? I can bet you right now, even people who will see this, right? There are people in their 40s, well into 50s. They have never interrogated, why do I keep on repeating the same mistakes when it comes to money, right? Most of the time, it's about how you grew up. But and now you see, Google, it comes back. How you grew up informs most of how you see money and view money and use money. But because you've never interrogated that, you are sort of on autopilot.
Yes.
You're on autopilot, doing the same mistakes as everybody else, avoiding this topic. And what are your kids seeing?
Exactly. You're taking us to a very important point, right? I almost feel like I'm in my psychologist's chair. Where it was like, tell me about your childhood.
Yes.
But this also can work twofold, right? Not only to reflect on your own childhood experiences, to understand what how you view money, but also then now as a parent or the uncle, the cool aunt that you might be, actually taking the lead in then having and leading conversations around money with children or loved ones. And what has been some of the experiences you've witnessed parents go through in terms of the boot camp or feedback that you've heard from conversations you've had?
So because obviously, especially with the boot camp, it starts off with one person, right? One person from that company joining the boot camp. And this is an actual funny story that has happened. And normally the partners are not part of the boot camp, right? And we have this one-on-one sessions. We're talking about, okay, you print out your bank statement, you give me your benefit statement, you give me all the debts that you have. We take a look at your, literally your entire financial life, right?
Gotcha.
And I remember one of the ladies' husband saying, who's this person? Why are you telling this person our business?
Referring to you.
Yes. Who is she? What does she even know, right? And I think we went about 2-3 sessions. Then the next thing he would pass. And one time he says, hey, can I ask you a question? Answered the question. Came back and said, oh, you were actually right. I said, well, I know. But anyway, we let it go. Then next thing, he started joining in on the sessions. What was meant to be, you are going to fix your finances, trickled into, okay, pulling in my husband. That has had such a massive impact, not just on her, but her marriage, and now investing and saving for their kids' future. They have an estate plan. they have a retirement plan, and they know exactly what's going on with their money. So I think if you are someone who is nervous watching this to start on that journey, just imagine the transformation that it can be, not only for you, but your entire family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is the power of just saying, you know what, I'm going to start having these conversations. But also, Gugu, let's be practical.
Yeah.
Right? How do you start teaching perhaps your children around money?
Beyond telling them that it doesn't grow on trees.
Exactly. And please don't do that.
Right?
Don't do that. It's
Because then it's
2025.
fear mentality
Yes.
and a scarcity mentality.
Exactly. And you do not want that with your children. And often when people say that, it's because it's been said to them over and over and over, and they've started to believe it. So you have to interrogate those limiting beliefs. I always say with parents, think about it this way. Teaching your kids about money. Think that there's always an opportunity to teach your kids about money.
100%.
Right? That's how I think about it. There's always, I have a 10-year-old boy and a 4-year-old. And I'm always saying there's an opportunity to teach them about money everywhere. The opportunities are everywhere. Right?
Yeah.
So for example, pocket money. Or, if you're going to send them with something at school, maybe on Friday they have TAC. I know most schools now do like what you call TAC.
Yes.
Don't do that. Give them real cash, something that is tactile.
Okay.
Right? Because now you're introducing that money is something that it's a finite thing, right?
Yes.
At some point, it's going to finish. So you give them, 20 Rand, and they know, okay, I can only buy this and this and this and this. So our kids are losing that tactileness of money. And now they all know, dwing.
This
So
never
there's no
ending
connection.
digital.
Exactly. And again, also by giving them hard, real cash, you're teaching them responsibility. If you lose it, then you're not going to enjoy anything at school. So yes, you have to keep it safe, right? And that applies even later in life, that you have to be responsible with your money.
100%. Mapalo, this is really refreshing because I think we do take for granted that in as much as we live in a digital world, which is offered so much access and flexibility, but it really does take away the tangible experience of actually handling money, caring for money, losing a 10 Rand in your pocket and finding it 3 months later when it comes out of the wash and still, finding the sense of joy and thrill, right?
There we go.
Exactly.
There we go.
This is also so intriguing because a lot of us typically think when you have to educate children about money, it also has to go back to the very serious stuff. But as you say, it goes back to the fundamentals of budgeting, helping them understand how they can use money as a resource. But I imagine that there's also opportunities for them to understand how income and money can be derived,
Absolutely.
how wealth can also grow, especially by exercising patience over the long term when it comes to investments.
That is so important. And, I often get the question, at what age should you start teaching your kids about money? And I'm like, your kids are smart. My kids, the 10-year-old, he's doing coding at school. Okay. He has built a little robot that moves up and down. So our kids are capable of learning about money.
I got you.
Okay. It does not matter what age. Yes, it has to be age appropriate. And also you can see when a child has more interest in this thing. My 10-year-old, we go to a restaurant. So let's say we went out for ice cream, for example. I give him the bill. I say, what do you see? That's an opportunity, right? Because we never bring our kids into these things. We're thinking, oh, no, they're kids. Don't bombard your kids with, okay, we can't pay the bond this week or whatever.
That's
the
a
big
bit heavy
stuff,
for a
come on, that's a
10-year-old.
bit heavy, right? Don't scare them off.
Yeah.
But bring them in. And I say, what do you see? He says, oh, okay, I had ice cream, you had this, my brother had this. And I said, okay, so what is this other amount? Oh, that. Now he knows, that's the government's money.
Interesting take.
Right? So parents, there are always opportunities to teach your kids about money. And just the other day, he showed me a Coke. I think it's something that he had gotten from a birthday pack. And he says, Mom, this is $1 and whatever. It's $1 and some cents. Because now he's learned about the exchange rate.
Got you.
Right? So there is always an opportunity for your kids to learn about money. Another thing that we do in my house, I had our financial planner come, right? And he came around and our sons were there just playing around. And when he left, he said, "Who was that?" I said, "Oh, that's our financial planner." And my son said, "Oh, I thought you took care of that." I said, "Yes, even though I do, I still want someone who can oversee things, someone who will see things from a different eye than me, right? Someone who I can be accountable to."
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things, I didn't sit him down, or we didn't sit them down and say, "Now today we are going to talk about money," right? There's opportunities every single day. Go and open a bank account for them and give it to them and say, "Hey, this is your responsibility. And once you do your chores around the house, if you do extra and above, we are going to give you some money," right? The funniest thing happened. We had this jar. So also because kids are visual beings.
Yes.
Put it in a clear jar, right? So whenever you have like a 10 rand, 20 rand, $100, whatever it is that you would be giving them, put it in a clear jar. There's something when you see that, oh, this thing is growing,
right?
This thing is growing. At the end of the year, or I think it was the beginning of the year rather, we took him with his brother to the bank and he held this jar at the back of the car seat.
Wanting to keep it safe.
Like, this is my money. And we went and to the bank so that, we can deposit the money. And he's holding it. And he was so bored at the bank. He was like, "Oh my gosh, now we have to count everything in 2 rands and 5 rands and 10 rands.
Yes.
But a lot of kids don't have that experience. What did we teach them in that point? That the money in that card comes from somewhere.
Yes.
It just doesn't appear from nowhere.
Either earned, saved, or sacrificed.
Exactly.
And he actually participated in that experience. Then he witnessed the growth over time in the jar, which was
100%.
patience being exercised.
And guess what? So they went to Comic-Con with his cousins and was supposed to buy ice cream for them, because he remembered just how long it took him to save that money now that is sitting in his bank account. He said, "No, they can drink water."
Oh, wow.
They can drink water.
He wasn't the cool cousin that day.
No, because he knew what it took for his money to be saved, for the money to grow. So parents, truly, I implore you, there is so many opportunities to teach our kids about money. But first, you have to be comfortable about talking about it.
That's so true. Mapalo, you've taken us on a wonderful journey and practical experiences as well that many of us will be able to learn from. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a cool aunt or uncle, a family member, a godparent, either way, there's a way within which you can play an influence into a child's life or a minor's life regarding discussing finances and teaching them about it practically. I want to go back to a point that you've been emphasizing so clearly. Is that we as individuals firstly need to be comfortable about money. And it reminds me of a few chapters in your first book, You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich, where you delve around a wide variety of themes, but typically speaking to family about money, dealing with some challenges like black tax, and even when it comes to adequate estate planning. And perhaps it's in our adulthood, with or without children, that we get to understand the reality of our financial behavior, what perceptions and attitudes we have towards money, and then that either restricts for the large majority or opens up an opportunity for one to have a frank conversation with a loved one to tell them, "I can't support you this month," or "I actually can, but to this extent." Or after this particular period of time, now that I've made that investment on your behalf, the responsibility falls on you. Or even speaking to a partner or a spouse to say, "Well, this is the savings pot that I have. This is how I'd like to spend it with you in partnership with finding a way as to how this money then catapults us into the growth that we want." So it's a very intriguing point. And I think perhaps it's a beautiful way of getting just a refresher of some of the chapters you've shared, the stories and conversations you've had with many people around the tough, uncomfortable, and sometimes unattractive conversations that come about when it comes to talking about money and how best to navigate that.
Yeah. I'll give you a literal example that we had just gone through now with the Mind Bootcamp and other sessions that I've had with people, right? This lady was saying, "You know what? I'm becoming resentful of giving. I love my family. I want to be the one that helps, but I'm becoming resentful." And I said to her, "Well, is that true giving? If you are becoming resentful?" And I said, "Have you discussed with your family that, okay, I can only actually afford to go this far?" And she said, "No." I said, "So what did you expect?"
Got you.
Normally, we do not want to have the conversations again, right? And sometimes it's twofold, right? Because remember, money is quite an emotional thing. And I know a lot of the times people always say money is just numbers. No, even Morgan Housel says that people are not crazy for the decisions they make. It's quite an emotional thing.
Exactly. That's the author of the book, The Psychology of Money.
Yes, exactly. So sometimes, yes, we want to be seen as the one people can go to, right? We want to be the savior.
Yes.
Right? Sometimes we do have a complex, and some you just don't want to disappoint people, right? And either one of them, if it's not a true reflection of what's happening with your own finances, then you are going to feel resentful. I know people who would even use their credit card because their mom would say, hey, I'm running low. And I said to her, okay, what is it that you can actually afford to give to your family every single month if that's their setup, right? And she went and said, okay, this is the amount. I said, okay, now it's time to have the conversation with your mom. And she was terrified. Gugu, when I say she was terrified, I even said to her, because, a lot of the times I put a little bit of a...
Oh, you're firm. Oh, you're firm. Yeah. I know that.
Yeah. I said, I'm giving you a due date for this conversation. You cannot keep on running around. She had the conversation with her mom. Her mom still loves her. Guess what? And I think the fear of not being loved because now you have set boundaries is a big deal for a lot of people. But once you set boundaries, you respect yourself more, right? And other people eventually respect you. Because yes, it might be tough because you are the go-to person. But eventually people will respect you and know that, you know what, that one, if it's a no, it's a no. If it's a yes, it's an actual yes, right? I think at least you owe that to yourself. I think for me, that's the biggest thing. Just you owe yourself to say, if it's a yes, it's a yes. If it's a no, then also it's a no.
100%. And I think that's really refreshing and encouraging because as you say, it's, being able to assist those in your periphery while still understanding that you're not compromising on your own level of growth and financial success that you'd like to attain. Mapalo, we've touched on so many points, right? And I love that we've, literally gone from the journey of, yes, evaluating adults, but also parenthood and children, and then bringing it back to, even when they grow up as adults, how they actually need to establish boundaries in terms of their financial roles and responsibilities. But as key takeaways for us to actually walk away with practically for anyone who's watching and does want to move into the festive season to have bold conversations with their loved ones, the start of a new year in 2026, and some conversations might be a little bit less comfortable than others. What's a practical toolkit? 3 things that we need to keep top of mind that we can implement going forward.
I think, Gugu, what I've noticed over the years, talking to people, especially people who have never really engaged with their money in a positive way, you don't have to be perfect. I think so many times people just are heavy on, oh my gosh, I should have known better. I should know better. Who has taught you these things, right? But don't just stay there also. Don't just say, well, nobody taught me this thing. I think the first thing, if you're watching this, that's the first step, right? Yeah. It means that you're interested, you're consuming the content that actually is going to help you. Then from there, don't try to learn everything all at once. And I think that can be very overwhelming. I mean, just earlier we were talking about just the number of exchange-traded funds that I listed. Tons. Unit trusts, tons. Yeah. The number of shares that people can access, tons. Don't look at it that way. Just say, okay, what am I willing to learn, right? Is it budgeting? Is it getting out of debt? Is it starting to invest? What is this estate planning they're talking about? Let me just go draft a will. Just jot down every single month one thing that you're going to focus on when it comes to your personal finances. Don't do everything all at once because that can be very overwhelming, right? Then start consuming things around that. Read. Yes. Right? But also fact check. Okay? Yes, because there's real life where there's legislation, there's actually how things work, and there's TikTok as well. Exactly. Okay.
And I was about to say, don't get duped into the quick wins, right? Because so often we hear the invest in this now and you could get 1,000% a return.
That is absolutely crazy.
If it's too good to be true, it probably
100%,
is.
100%. And just one thing on that, Gugu, it reminds me of even with our children, teach them delayed gratification.
Yes.
Right? Even if you are someone who can afford to buy your child the latest gadget, just teach them to wait. Because remember, you're not raising your kids just to be, children who have everything. You are raising them to be adults who will be responsible with money, who know that, yes, there's opportunity cost. There are things that they have to wait for, right? So even going into the festive season, think about your financial life. And I know a lot of the times people always say, well, I'll start in January. In Jan, I get so many emails. This is the year that I'm finally getting my finances together. Good and well, audacious, right? But you can start right now. In December, taking stock and saying, all right, how can I spend this December so that I do not regret January and February, right? So that I'm not always starting from scratch. I mean, we all know if you're getting paid on I don't know, when do people get paid?
Typically the 25th. You're such an entrepreneur, because that's only something an entrepreneur would say.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so people get paid around the 25th, right?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to last you until the 25th again?
Exactly.
And those first few weeks, people just squander. And I mean, also, let's not be so much into consumerism. And I know it's very hard in a world where if you're on social media, you see about 5,000 ads every single day. And I know it's contrary to what we see, but I think one of the things for me even, keeping your life as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Fight for simplicity in your life, because then you will be able to save for your future, for your kids' future, for your own retirement, and actually make sure that you leave a legacy, not just something that you hear on social media about generational wealth, but something that is actually tangible. When you wake up, let's say we wake you up 2 a.m., you know exactly what's happening in your finances.
Precisely.
That is true legacy, and that's what you want for your children.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's, without having to log on to the banking app or question, have I finalized or updated the will?
Yeah.
Actually making sure that you do have those yearly check-ins with your financial advisor or financial planner. I do want to challenge you just briefly before we do wrap up, because many might say, but I work so hard, Mapalo.
Yeah.
I have been disciplined and I've been saving. At what point and how do I actually celebrate financial gains and successes? And I guess that also depends on the person, right? Because everyone's financial goals are different. For someone else, it might be studying further. It might be purchasing a home. It might be contributing to some kind of family development, or even taking care of loved ones. But yeah, on a lighter note, we work hard for this money. We invest it safely on the JSE through all the right platforms that are regulated. We follow through the rules. And then we actually want to enjoy it, to say, you know what? This is a great reward.
Yeah, I am an absolute big believer of having a balance, making sure that I do the right things. And I think if you do the right things, it gives you so much comfort that you are actually able to enjoy yourself. So when you go on holiday, don't use your credit card. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. If you're going to go on holiday, for example, that's something that you're doing, you're building memories. Save for it, so that when you're there, it's actual enjoyment and you don't come back. The memories are there, but now you're dealing with debt.
Got you.
Right?
So and debt that you can't manage effectively.
That you can't
because
manage.
There's other ways of managing it effectively as well. But if you fail to, that can be problematic.
Exactly. I'll give you an example. I mean, I had a tax refund, and one thing I always do whenever I'm going to get some sort of lump sum, I don't care where it comes from, it will never hit my account without me knowing where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right? Don't wait until it's there for you to figure out. I knew that I was going to top up my retirement annuity, maxed out my tax-free savings account, then the rest. I took my parents out. We had a blast.
Right.
We had a blast. But I knew I had taken care of the most important things first. And always think about your goals. And I think sometimes, we have career goals. We're talking about studying further. We're talking about, okay, you want to buy a house. But actual financial goals, put them down somewhere if you can see them on a regular basis, because it will help you make decisions. So if you're going to go out and eat at a fancy restaurant, let's say you're going to pay $1,000, perhaps you could go somewhere where you eat for $600, right? So you see, you're still doing the things that you enjoy, but now saying the difference is going to go towards okay, I want to give my kids a head start. So I'm going to put into their tax-free savings account. I want to make sure that their university fees are taken care of. I'm going to put it into that discretionary fund. I want to make sure that I do not depend on my children at retirement. So I need to be cognizant of my own retirement needs as well.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you've put it succinctly, and also appreciating that everyone's circumstances are different.
Yes.
Our desires, our goals, our objectives are all different. But the truth is, money is the enabler that can actually give us the options to live the kind of quality of life that we'd like to enjoy. Mapalo, such a fantastic conversation with you today. And the truth is, it can go on for hours and hours because it's very layered. But if anything, you've given us a toolkit that we can implement and certainly journey with going forward. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me here, Gugu. I always have such a wonderful time talking to you.
Fantastic. I always enjoy it too. Whether here at the JSE She Invests or many other platforms, always amazing getting insight from you. Well, that is Mapalo Makhu joining us today as a personal finance coach, author and speaker, and someone who has had years of experience in terms of journeying with various clients, you and I, like everyday South Africans and other peers across the continent, to fully understand how we make money work to the best of its ability to meet our personal financial goals and objectives. And hopefully this has given you a kickstart to understanding how you now can also implement solutions and conversations to kickstart financial conversations with your family. You need to be bold, you do need to be brave, but you also need to be consistent, because it's not just a once-off conversation that actually builds a level of financial awareness. It's the ongoing engagement that allows for an understanding of the intricacies involved, not only in your day-to-day finances, but even till estate planning and the fundamentals of how your family can get access, feedback, and insight into key financial outcomes that have a benefit for all of you. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Do feel free to share your comments, your feedback, and your suggestions, not only on social media, but of course in the comments section. Remember as well to like, subscribe, and join us for ongoing conversations that we'll have in the year 2026, right here on the JSE Investor Avenue podcast series.